of the Henry King. Aviation Tariff, and VIPA welcomes public here in St. Croix at the UVI Great Hall is the first of 3 scheduled public hearings. VIPA and Sky City will also host hearings on St. Thomas at UVI this Wednesday and in St. John at the Julius Sproul Auditorium on Thursday. Both hearings start at 6 p.m. This evening's presentation will be led by VIPA Interim Executive Director, Mrs. Ava Penn, and Mr. Steve Nolan and Ryan Yakubik from Sky City, who is VIPA's Airports P3 partner. We also have other members of the VIPA and Sky City leadership team present. Mr. Bill Rollins, our Assistant Executive Director. We have our legal counsel, Attorney Catherine Hendry. Okay, and from Sky City, we also have Project Director, Mr. Mo Kamle. There you are, okay. All right, a few guidelines for tonight's hearing. First, we'll discuss the rate methodology. Please hold all questions until the end of the presentation in the interest of time. To ensure that everyone has an equal opportunity to be heard, we'll have 1 round of questions at the end of the presentation. Each person will be limited to 2 minutes for their remarks. The rates presentation and the question and answer period will end at 7 p.m. and we'll transition into the presentation of the proposed terminal designs. VIPA and Sky City officials will be present after as you walk around the room to look at the designs to answer your questions at that time. We also have a comment form at the sign-in desk if you have additional questions you want to submit, and you may also send your questions to us at info@viport.com. We ask that everyone please remain courteous and respectful throughout the hearing. And finally, please silence or place your phones or mobile devices on vibrate. And also for your information, as I mentioned before, tonight's hearing will be recorded and it will be on the Port Authority's YouTube channel, which is named Virgin Islands Port Authority. Thank you again for joining us and for participating in this important public process. And now I'll turn the floor over to VIPA Interim Executive Director, Mrs. Ava Penn.
Thank you, Manifa. This is the mic. All right, good evening, St. Croix. All right. I want to thank everyone for taking the time to participate in the discussion regarding proposed changes to the methodology used to calculate rates and charges at our airports. I am Ava Penn, Interim Executive Director at the Virgin Islands Port Authority. As Manifa had indicated, VIPA is required by law to conduct this hearing to inform the public of any changes to its tariffs and to give interested persons an opportunity to provide comment and ask questions. A large share of the cost of operating the airports is derived from user fees VIPA charges to airlines under the authority's Aviation Tariff. Under the new tariff methodology, capital, operating, and maintenance costs will continue to be paid for by the primary users of the airports, the airlines. The new tariff is not a tax on passengers. The proposed new tariff methodology sets forth the initial framework proposed by VIPA for the P3 development of the airports. VIPA is the airport sponsor, with Sky City as the nominated operator under the transition agreement. Sky City has been expressly engaged to consult on, develop, and present proposed rates and charges. Therefore, as VIPA's representative, Sky City developed the methodology that will be discussed this evening and is acting in an advisory capacity to present and answer your questions regarding the rates and charges that will go into effect when it commences operational services at both of our airports. Upon approval by VIPA's governing board, the updated aviation tariff will reflect the new methodology to become effective November 1st, 2026. I will now turn it over to Mr. Steve Nakan, President of Econ Concessions and the Chairman of the Board of Sky City Consortium, to give remarks and to introduce his team and the presentation. Steve?
Thank you, Ms. Penn. Good evening, everybody. I was going to welcome you all to this event, and then I realized that we're in your house. So I would like to extend a thank you for welcoming us, Sky City, and our partners to St. Croix, and we'll be delighted to be addressing you this evening to cover both the rates and charges methodology, as was mentioned, as well as an introduction to the project. I would like to introduce for all of you who Sky City is initially. We're a special purpose consortium that was put together specifically for this project with skills and experience coming from each of the 4 members of the partnership that are needed in order to develop and deliver this project. Aecon is Canada's largest publicly traded infrastructure, investment, development, and construction company with a long history of experience, around 150 years, building, investing, financing, and operating infrastructure across North America, Caribbean, and internationally. We're an investor and a builder. TK Howe Star Infrastructure is a New York-based private equity firm specializing in infrastructure and public-private partnerships. Between us, we're the equity partners in Sky City. J. Benton Construction is a local construction company in partnership with Consigli Construction out of Boston. They are our local talent, our eyes and ears, and our head of logistics and delivering projects in the Virgin Islands. And Avports is our operations and maintenance partner with experience across roughly 30 projects, operating and maintaining airports primarily in the mainland US. I would like to introduce to you now Ryan Yakubik. Ryan is our specialist in all things airlines and rates and charges. Ryan will be speaking to the rates and charges methodology this evening. In a former life, Ryan was the Chief Financial Officer at LAX, and so he is eminently qualified to speak to these matters. Ryan, would you please come up?
Good evening, everybody, and I do want to echo Steve and thank you for hosting us here tonight. It's a pleasure visiting the island. I've been here about a day and a half and really enjoyed it, and get another half a day tomorrow before I take off. But as I mentioned, I'm here to discuss and give you an overview of the rates and charges methodology that VIPA is bringing forward. And methodology is just how VIPA intends to establish rates and charges on a going forward basis. Before we go too far into this, I'm going to primarily be focused tonight on providing an overview of this methodology and the rates that it produces, but the complete rate methodology is posted on VIPA's website with a great deal of detail. So I do invite you all to visit the website and view that methodology there. As I mentioned, VIPA is currently going to install a new rates and charges methodology. They have a current aviation tariff by which they establish their rates, and this updated tariff is intended to ensure VIPA has the ability to recover all of its operating, maintenance, and future capital costs going forward on an ongoing basis. As Ava mentioned, VIPA has been active in its oversight and review of the development of this methodology that Sky City has undertaken, and they've been particularly involved and insistent that this be a transparent process that is clear to all of our stakeholders, airlines, and the public as well. And this is to ensure that these rates are fair and equally transparent. The methodology that is being adopted or that is being proposed is a methodology that is in place at most or many U.S. domestic airports, and so it is very common from that standpoint. Once the methodology is adopted, the rates will be set and implemented by Sky City as the new operator. So next slide. So when we talk about a rate methodology is all about recovering the costs of the operation of an airport. And the costs of an operation of the airport are significant. Not only is the footprint very large just in terms of land area, but the functions of an airport are very complicated, and they're spanned all the way from things going on in the airfield. This may include repairing pavement to make sure that operations of the aircraft are safe on the airfield, securing the airfield with fencing, making repairs in and around the airfield, hiring staff, safety and security and staff, fire department, police department, and the like, paying utility bills. There's airfield lighting, there's sewer drainage, all sorts of things like that. All of these types of costs are built in. And moving over to the terminal building, there's a number of, what one would expect, costs of custodial, cost for security, cost for maintaining all of the complicated equipment that's in a terminal building, and these have significant expenses. I mentioned that the overall airport would, or I didn't mention, but I wanted to point out that the overall airport is projecting approximately $67 million in expenses for the 11 months starting November 1st. And that significant expense needs to be recovered so VIPA can ensure the safe and professional operations of its airports going forward. The focus of the rate methodology is specifically on the aeronautical areas of the airports, and focus primarily on the airfield and terminal. Next slide, please. So initially, when the rates are set in for the coming fiscal year, they will focus primarily on operations costs of the airport. There are no current capital costs envisioned for fiscal year 2027. Those costs would not be included and recovered in the rate methodology until those projects are put in place out in the future. The rates are set by, in effect, gathering the costs in the various areas of the airport and then allocating those costs as they are applying to the various functions, particularly within the terminal building. So baggage system costs are aggregated and charged in a baggage fee. Ticket counter costs are aggregated and charged in a ticket counter fee, and so on. Next slide. To give you a sense, there are a number of charges, and again, these are cost recovery-based charges at the airport. These would include a landing fee, ticket counter fees, joint use fees, hold room fees. In the future, there'll be passenger boarding bridge fees, and then additional fees for specific commuter and international facilities. And these fees are meant to allocate costs specifically to users and make sure they're fair and equitable for the people using the things on the airport and paying for those uses. And this chart, well, there's a lot going on it, is also intended to provide some visibility as to who might be paying those charges, whether they be a domestic airline, an international airline, or a commuter airline. Next slide. So once these fees are completed and adopted by VIPA, the fees would go into place, as I mentioned, on November 1st, and Sky City would have the responsibility for both administering these fees in the current year and updating these fees in every year that comes after that to ensure VIPA is recovering its costs for each year. The costs as they are established based on budgeted amounts and then are trued up for actual costs at the end of the year to ensure the actual costs are actually being paid by the users. And so at the end of the year, if the budget fees are too high, those costs will be rebated to the users. If the fees are too low, additional invoices will be sent to make sure that VIPA received its full recovery. So with that being said, the rates are expected to go in place on November 1st to support the safe and effective operations of the airport. That generally concludes my overview of the rates and charges methodology, and I'd like to turn it back for opening the rates or the question and answer portion of the of the session.
President? Okay. We will now begin the question and answer portion of tonight's rate hearing. Questions? Please stand to ask your questions and state your name before asking a question.
Good evening, Francine Lang. So the methodology is on the Port Authority website. I didn't know that in advance, so I didn't have a chance to read it, but are the old rates included in this methodology document?
I don't believe the old rates are included in the methodology document. I believe they are posted on the website.
Okay, thank you.
Yes, the existing Port Authority tariff is posted on our website on the same page with the methodology. Okay, if there's a link to it in the press release that we have linked on the homepage of the Port Authority's website. Our website, for those who are listening, www.viport.com, and it's under the rates and statistics page. Okay. Next question, please state your name and stand.
Hi, I'm Chris. I'm curious. So I appreciate that you're stating that this system that you all are working on is what is standard. You bring up US airports. So I am curious specifically how this compares, even if you have that information, to other Caribbean airports, because they are our competition. And we already struggle a bit here from a cost structure, specifically on St. Croix, and how that might affect some longer out.
I'll see how I can address that. How's that? Oh, here, I'll let Steve take a crack at it.
I'll take a crack at it because we've done extensive analysis of the fees and charges that are paid across the Caribbean as the right peer benchmark set for this airport. When the new tariffs go into effect this November, and for the first 4 years, 4 to 5 years of the project before capital charges go into effect, the U.S. Virgin Islands will still be at the very low end of the benchmark set of the Caribbean airports. Later on, when fees are increased to cover the capital investments, we will still be well within the Caribbean benchmarks, but a little higher. Thank you.
And maybe something I can layer on there just for perspective, because the Caribbean airports by and large are international airports and not subject to US DOT rates and charges policies and requirements. So there's a slightly different regime. Some of those airports will collect their fees to fund their operations through direct taxes on passengers, through convention and visitors fees and taxes. So the revenue sources for those airports may come through a different methodology, if you will. Since we're here talking about methodologies, I'll grab methodology, but they come through a different approach to how the airports fund themselves. And so it gets a little tricky from apples and oranges. What Steve's pointing to is all of these taxes and fees that are used to fund these at other airports amount to a fairly substantial amount when you take the number of passengers that are transiting those airports. And Steve, correct me if I'm wrong on that, but that's what you're looking at. So just to make sure, it's kind of apples and oranges and kind of not. There's the cost of running airports are cost of running airport, and you're absolutely correct. Caribbean probably is the right benchmark to look at peers, because they're all different islands here, and the cost of operating on an island are somewhat different than, say, some landlocked small airport in the middle of the United States. So we do recognize that.
Do you have another question?
Good afternoon, Dan Coughlin. The media had an article recently about these rates, the tariffs. And these, according to the media, they were like, I forget the exact number, but they were 10 times the average across the United States of some major airports. So the Port Authority's been operating basically as a nonprofit for pretty much since its inception. And they're basically required to break even or do better and have a surplus. And the airports have been operating. I mean, not the best maintenance all around, but they operate. So how is it that it's talking about getting a return on the capital investment? How is it that it just jumps so high? I know you keep saying you've done your extensive research, but the numbers just don't seem to add up to me. And I'm an engineer, civil, and I've worked for the Port Authority on some projects, and I just don't get it. And if it's a nonprofit and they're doing their job, it's working okay, and Sky City comes in, you guys have to make a profit, and that's got to show up somewhere in these numbers. So I don't get it, and I really don't have a question, but I'm just suspicious.
Well, I don't want you to be suspicious, so let me just take a crack at kind of getting to your point. Under the USDOT rates and charges policy, airports, can recover their costs. So coming back to why are the fees going up, and where is the money going? The costs that we're talking about here and the rates we're talking about establishing under this methodology are cost-based fees. So they're recovering the costs. You mentioned the airports are, okay and being managed okay. And VIPA has decided that they want to bring in a professional operator to ensure that the airports are operated and maintained, I think, more than okay. I think there's an interest in making sure that the airports are well run and well maintained and safe and secure for the passengers. And as we look out into the future, can accommodate future growth. And so all of that comes with a cost. Everybody who is doing work at an airport, I'm sure any engineering firm you've worked with at the port, is doing that work for some profit. And so just like any of the other vendors, Sky City as an operator is receiving a management fee for their management and operation of the airport. But all of those costs, those fees, everything are pushed into this rate recovery, where, as I mentioned, the next year's rates are being set based on operations, and that's largely because VIPA isn't receiving the recovery it should be receiving today from its fees, so it's probably recovering less than it should. The very large, I think you referred to, very, very high. Those are associated with a capital program that's meant to address, the facilities here in the Virgin Islands and improve the airports here in the Virgin Islands. The cost of those facilities are the cost of those facilities and financing those facilities. And it's just putting those costs into the same rate methodology that we've discussed today. So hopefully that gets to some of the point on that, but it's not a hiding the ball. The costs are just being recovered and pushed through a methodology. Yeah. Oh.
We do have another question, but for those of you that just joined us, I just want to repeat that we are having one round of questions, 2 minutes per person. And state your name, please stand, and state your name before you ask your question.
Thank you. My name is Gustav James, and I have a couple of concerns and questions. First of all, I'm kind of curious as to the process, because it seems like you all have already decided what you're going to do, and you're going to already increase these fees by November of 2026. So kind of curious as to why we're having this here. Also, what I saw in the newspapers was that the airlines have not been a part of this process, which was shocking to me, because I just couldn't envision an entity deciding to change the entire structure and fees at an airport and not consulting with the airlines. So can someone give me some idea as to why we're doing this, how this works, and where the airlines stand? Thank you.
So maybe to take that in two parts. The first is why is VIPA going through this process? And I think Ava outlined that at the outset of this is, I believe, part of the administrative process that VIPA has to go through when they're updating fees and charges and consulting with, and having these consultation meetings with the public. And Ava, did I present that correctly, or would you like to clarify it?
I'll just say that from 2022, thereabout, we have embarked on a project to modernize our airports. We went through a rigorous RFP process, and Sky City was selected as our P3 partner. Throughout the process, we have engaged with all of our stakeholders, including the airlines. And while we may not have agreed on the method by which we have embarked on this process, the airlines have been engaged. As a matter of fact, they're here this evening. We've held several meetings with the airlines to solicit their input. So we are here because the law requires VIPA to conduct public hearings when we are going to change the methodology or amend our aviation tariff. Sure, go ahead.
Well, I would expect that you engage the public. I would have hoped that you would engage the public prior to making your decisions. And so it seems to me like we're being engaged after you have made your decisions and you have set your dates and you're moving forward. So I feel like we are being informed, which I could have gotten this information by mail. And what I'm saying is that when you ask us to appear here, I'm thinking that our input means something, but apparently we're late. Thank you.
Your input does mean something, and we have had the public engagement over the years. We've had the charrettes, we've introduced Sky City, and let the public know what it is we're doing along this is just another part of the process. So you're invited to share your questions and your comments, and we will take them under advisement. And if there's something that you see that we can improve upon, we by all means will take it under consideration. So the process isn't done. This is part of the process.
Okay, as a reminder, we do have 2 minutes per person, but you agreed that you'll be the only one speaking?
Yes, so we'll all be using the 2 minutes for the 3 of us.
Yeah, so just to be clear, I'm using the 2 minutes of my colleagues as well here. If I need to finish this with a question, I will be sure to do that. My name is Lauren Carr with American Airlines. I am the chair of the AAAC, which is the organization that represents the air carrier.
Thanks.
The AAAC is the organization that represents the air carriers in our dealings with the airport. I would like to start by correcting one thing. Out closer, that'll help. Is that better? Okay. First of all, the airlines were not engaged with the RFP process. We were not given an opportunity to help select the entities. So when we said that we were not involved, we were not involved. There is definite difference of opinion in how that went down. Having said that, I will remind everybody, the airlines cooperatively have operated hundreds of airports, and we have combined thousands of years of experience in building terminals, operating terminals, and managing airport infrastructure. So when certain entities come around and say the airlines are not sure what they're talking about, I assure you that is an incorrect statement as well. I do appreciate the opportunity to speak tonight, and I am here on behalf of all the carriers. And I want to stress when I say all the carriers that this is unanimous amongst the carriers. The tariff changes presented this evening are being used to compel acceptance of a capital program that airlines have repeatedly opposed. Imposing higher tariffs to fund a disputed project is not meaningful engagement. It is forcing costs onto airlines and the traveling public with dire consequences. And at the beginning of this session, they said there's no direct tax on passengers. That is technically correct. But if you think costs don't get passed on to you, you are naive. All the costs will get passed on. Let us begin with something we all agree on. The airports of St. Thomas and St. Croix need investment. The people of the Virgin Islands deserve modern, safer, and reliable airport facilities, and airlines have consistently supported that. But supporting that modernization does not mean supporting any project at any cost. A plan must remain economically viable for travelers and airlines alike. And over the past 2 years, the airline community has dedicated thousands of hours and more than $1.5 million of our own resources, acting in good faith negotiations with Sky City and VIPA in efforts to mutually identify an affordable and responsible path forward. We do not simply oppose Sky City's proposal. In fact, we worked with them for months and months trying to reach agreement. We independently developed an alternative $390 million phased redevelopment plan that modernizes both airports, improves the passenger experience, addresses critical infrastructure needs, and does so at a cost that is financially sustainable. Ultimately, that proposal was rejected. And let's be clear, we are not opposed to a third-party operator. We absolutely agree that we need a third-party operator at these two airports. It is the capital program that is the primary concern here. The current proposal presented by VIPA and Sky City carries an estimated program cost of approximately $1.2 billion, of which only $690 million is construction project costs. It's a level of spending that's unprecedented for airports of this size and market profile. Under the proposal presented here tonight, the cost of serving those airports will become the highest in the U.S. airport system, and I want to go back to addressing airport system in the United States versus the Caribbean, and I thank you, Ryan, for trying to make your clarification, because they are very different things when it comes to how an airline views the cost of operating at an airport. And I don't want to get into the weeds in this, but from an accounting perspective, a tax is not an operating expense. And so what ends up happening when you use taxes to compare the costs at the airports to an actual operating expense, it changes whether or not the flight is profitable. And what the entities here don't seem to understand is that when you roll those costs into the operating expenses as opposed to a separate tax, from an accounting perspective, our flights will lose money. I'll let you derive for yourself what you think might happen if all the flights start losing money out of the U.S. Virgin Islands and what accessibility you might have to the surrounding islands and the mainland. Under the proposal presented tonight, about more than $126 a passenger, based on the projections. And that's their own projections, by the way, which admittedly, unless I get this wrong, and you can correct me if I'm wrong, did not take into account the fact that Spirit Airlines no longer exists. Frontier Airlines has left the islands already. Silver Airlines went bankrupt. I would like you to all take that into consideration when you think how levels of service might survive here as the costs continue to spiral upward. The costs here will be more expensive than New York City, Los Angeles, Honolulu. And I think about Honolulu because that's another island airport. There'll be multiples of more expensive here. Why does it matter? Because those costs are paid by the airlines, and the airlines must make investment decisions based on market realities. Our airplanes, they can fly anywhere. They do not have to fly to St. Thomas or St. Croix. And we will make rational decisions about the service levels we provide based on the costs that exist in any operating conditions. So I would encourage anyone to look at what's happened in Bermuda. And some of the operators here today have experience in Bermuda and see how the levels of service were impacted there. Moreover, the increased expense of travel will have a direct negative impact on those who work and reside in the territory, as well as those on travel decisions of tourists who may elect to visit other islands. We are equally concerned about the lack of financial transparency, and we did have a consultation meeting with VIPA and Sky City, and there were inconsistencies we found that we still need answers to. Before the community is asked to support a project of this magnitude, there should be greater discussion, and there should be definitely agreement on how these rates and charges are implemented, and that is not the case. I want to thank everybody here tonight for attending and showing your support for the Virgin Islands. I assure you, the air carriers, we've been here for decades, not the last 2.5 years. We want to support you too. Please help us make sure that that happens. Now, if you need a question, I'll stop.
Thank you very much.
Okay. Thank you. Good evening. My name is Wilfred Omare from Cape, and I just want to start to say that I've lived in St. Thomas for approximately 25 years, and I've been with Cape for 21 years. Our airline have faithfully served our community for the past 25 years. Throughout this time, I have witnessed numerous customers enjoying traveling to San Juan and St. Thomas for business, for vacation, for treatment. And what is concerning is that if we impose trying to improve our airport. My concern is that how is it this community, how are they going to handle it? Because it's going to create a very strain onto our community. So when I'm looking at the new airport, which is very, very important that we have a new airport, I leave it. But however, I just want us to put it in consideration, the seniors, the elderly people, the veterans that will be traveling back and forth. I want them to be able to afford it, to come. I don't want them to be, okay, the airport is pretty, but it's not affordable. And that's my own intake on that. Thanks.
Thank you, Wilfred. Thank you very much. Do we have any more questions? Please stand, state your name.
Hi, my name is Linda Brooks, and I just want to say exactly what this gentleman was saying. When someone for us, the loved ones, pass away in the United States, they have to bring their loved ones home. They don't come to St. Croix, they go to St. Thomas and it's getting very expensive. For the private planes to bring the bodies from St. Thomas to St. Croix is over $1,000. So I want to know how this is going to affect them, because at the end of the day, our loved ones do have to fly away until our health situation, our healthcare gets better. They have to fly away, and when they're coming back, they're either coming back home to go back out or coming back home in a body bag. So this doesn't seem reasonable to me. I'm new to this. I'm just like Mr. Gustav here. I want to find out, how did they get to choose Sky City? You said partners. The Virgin Islands is a part of the partners. I'm a partner, you're a partner, he's a partner. We all didn't have a decision. We need more information. I am very, very honored and happy that you were able to talk, because what you said made a lot of sense. You've been here for a lot of years. We all have. A lot of airlines have left us, but American Airlines have stayed. So I want to know how this is truly going to affect the people that have to travel. And is the truth, it is going to trickle down, because if I put all this money in this thing, somebody got paid.
Thank you. The Zoom is working. They can send their questions on Zoom. The Zoom is up now. Sorry. Correct. Is there any other questions? No. Okay, great. Then we can start with the second part of our presentation.
What about the person that speaks yourself?
Well, we'll go and check the questions, but we'll start with the second part while we're waiting. Okay, already. Okay, so we'll begin the presentation regarding the designs. Okay, we can start now.
I will turn that back to Steve and let him take that forward.
Thank you. And thank you for those comments, Lauren. We do appreciate them. We understand the difficulty that you have. The Bermuda project is the most successful Caribbean airport project. The airlines, including American, are delighted with the performance of that airport, the facilities and services they get. The fees have had no impact on service. I would like to, excuse me. So this portion of the evening is to talk about the project. We're going to speak about, give an overview of the project, the partnership, the P3, and then we're going to present to you some of the renderings that we have put together to show you what the improvements are going to look like in St. Thomas and St. Croix. This is a generational opportunity for the people of the U.S. Virgin Islands. VIPA has embarked on a bold plan to rectify decades of underinvestment in the territory's primary gateways in St. Croix and St. Thomas. The plan aims to modernize the two airports, each according to its own needs, respecting each island's unique heritage, aimed at transforming aviation infrastructure, passenger services and experience, and dignity, and ensuring resilience for the airports. Creating platforms to support the territory's tourism-based economy. More than 65% of your GDP depends on tourism, and the airports are the backbone of your economy. The project offers security to airport employees who will all retain their jobs and embraces local businesses to participate in the airport without any financial burden to VIPA, the government of the US Virgin Islands, or the taxpayers of the US Virgin Islands. It is entirely privately financed. You've all heard of a honey-do list, which is the list you get at home for all the things that need to be fixed. Well, there's a lot that needs to be fixed at both airports in the US Virgin Islands. This is just a summary, and we're going to go through in detail what we are doing to fix these things. In St. Croix, you all know, we have failing or failed airport equipment and systems, some beyond their useful life, some non-operational. Baggage handling system, largely non-functional. A fire protection system, not fully operational. A passenger flow inefficiencies, inadequate passenger service levels, and passenger experience, roof ponding and leaking, deteriorated landside infrastructure, curbs, parking roads, and sanitary system, and FAA compliance challenges. Mr. Kaufman, not okay. In St. Thomas, the problems are worse. We all know that it is under capacity. It's designed to handle about a third of the traffic it currently handles. The building and systems are beyond their useful life and in poor condition. Some are inactive. We have, with a team of experts, gone through every inch of that terminal, into the walls and under the floor. The baggage systems are outdated. The terminal has structural deficiencies and needs seismic and foundation upgrades for more capacity. Many assets do not meet code. Health and safety concerns, not FAA compliant. Poor operational service levels, poor and deteriorating passenger experience. These airports do not present the right image for the US Virgin Islands for your visitors that are coming and the lasting image when they leave, nor do they treat the citizens of the US Virgin Islands with dignity and respect. Together with VIPA, we have developed solutions to meet these challenges head on, modernizing both terminals, enhancing infrastructure with equitable investments across St. Thomas and St. Croix, relative to their respective traffic volumes, cost structures, and capacity, alleviating congestion and wait times and creating better travel experience, delivering modern, resilient systems and amenities and compliant and safe and efficient operations, providing for future tourism growth to underpin your tourism-based economy, and helping the US Virgin Islands remain competitive with other Caribbean airports and to maintain, if not grow, your market share. I briefly introduced our team at the beginning of this evening as a purpose-built special purpose consortium with local and international partners, together with the skills needed to deliver this project. as it relates to investment, as it relates to construction generally, and in the Caribbean, and in the US Virgin Islands, and as it relates to airport operations and knowledge of FAA airports. Our resume includes Bermuda, which we just discussed, the region's most successful P3 airport project. Our project in Ecuador, year after year, voted the best airport in South America. The region's most recent terminal success story, we built and handed over recently the new terminal in Anguilla. And proven regional and US operational track record, both in the Caribbean and on the US mainland through our partner in Avports, primarily in the Northeast, where they're operating approximately 12 airports. VIPA chose the P3 model because it is globally proven to deliver projects successfully. There are around 9,300 public-private partnership projects that are delivering critical public infrastructure. There are about 850 or more airport projects that have been delivered successfully across 90 countries using this methodology. This is a symbiotic relationship between a public sector client and a private partner to deliver public infrastructure and services, combining private sector capital, innovation, and operational capability with public ownership, oversight, and accountability. I want to emphasize that a P3, or public-private partnership, as does accountability. Project is financed using private funds, debt that we will raise and equity that we will invest, and not public sector debt or public sector funds. People of the US Virgin Islands get modernized airport facilities without having to bear the cost. At this point, we're going to take you through the renderings and to show you what we have designed for both St. Croix and St. Thomas in response to the challenges. I'd like to introduce a member of my team, Steve Payne, who's head of Technical Services, Operations and Maintenance for ACON and Sky City.
Good evening, everybody. I'm just going to take you through a high-level overview of the program that we intend to implement at both the St. Croix and St. Thomas airports. You'll see on the screen right now for St. Croix, we're in... So for St. Croix, we intend on implementing a number of modern upgrades that reflect the unique culture and heritage of the USVI by blending a refreshed design with local aesthetics to create a welcoming space that celebrates the island's identity and spirit. In addition to the aesthetic improvements that we intend to implement, we're also proposing to implement a number of resilience measures for the existing terminal building, improving the mechanical, electrical infrastructure at the airports, and ensuring that the terminal can operate during various environmental and climatic events and ensure that service is maintained. We'll be replacing a lot of the capital infrastructure at the terminal building, including generators, chillers, air handling units, and other critical pieces of equipment. We'll be also modernizing the commuter wing of the airport to bring it into a similar state of good repair and aesthetic improvements to the current domestic hold room. And in addition to that, we'll be implementing a fully enclosed domestic check-in area at the front of the terminal building, which will be conditioned and protect all passengers through the check-in process from any inclement weather that they might experience on their day of travel. And in addition to that, we're also proposing to implement 3 additional passenger boarding bridges at the terminal building for both arriving and departing aircraft, and ensuring that passengers are kept out of the elements during their boarding and disembarkation process. On the screen, you'll see a number of renderings that reflect the proposed changes. On screen right now, you'll see the enclosed domestic check-in area for St. Croix. Next slide. The proposed location of the new passenger boarding bridges. Some aesthetic improvements to the front of the terminal building. And again, the enclosed ticket hall. The interior of the domestic check-in ticketing area. And the proposed new refurbished commuter hold room. Moving on to St. Thomas. So at the St. Thomas Airport, we're proposing to go through a phased construction and modernization program. Initially, we'll commence with a number of temporary facilities that will allow us to decant a number of functions from the existing terminal into these temporary facilities. And then once those functions have been moved, we will commence a progressive demolition and reconstruction program at the terminal. This will result in a completely new building that is in compliance with current code, both structural, mechanical, electrical, and various other applicable codes. We will have a 2-story facility with a new hold room located on the upper floor and a brand new enclosed ticketing area for passenger check-in, which will then go through CBP TSA areas before progressing upstairs to the new hold room facility. In addition to this, we will be implementing a brand new baggage handling system, so passengers will no longer need to take their luggage from check-in through TSA and CBP. Bags will be taken at check-in and processed through this new baggage handling system and then loaded onto aircraft. From the hold room, passengers will also be able to access their departing aircraft through 9 passenger boarding bridges, again protecting all arriving and departing passengers from the elements. Next slide. So just going through some of the renderings, you'll see a bird's eye view of the proposed terminal building and the future 9 passenger boarding bridges. A rendition of the curbside enclosed space for the interior of the ticketing check-in area, CBP pre-clearance, leading up to the escalators that will take passengers through to the new hold room facility. And then there's some pictures of the proposed hold room configuration, with a number of new commercial and retail offerings that will be available to both arriving and departing passengers. Thank you.
I would like to introduce a member of our team, Jamez. Jamez joined Sky City recently and is our HR director. I thought it would be appropriate for Jamez to speak to this slide because he is a repatriating U.S. Virgin Islander, and it's one of the key objectives of our team is to bring people home for this project. So Jamez, please say a few words about this slide and about yourself.
All right. So a pleasant good evening. How are you? All right, so like Steve shared, my name is Jamez Ashby Jr. I am a son of these Virgin Islands. And like he shared, I serve as the HR director for Sky City. I joined Sky City in November I have been away. I have been part of that brain drain that we talk about all the time. I've been away for 13 years doing HR. In large consulting spaces and the federal government. Full transparency, 4 years ago, I started to look for opportunities to come home, and those opportunities for what I did not exist in the capacity I needed them to exist, where an opportunity to come home and also add to my career. So being that Sky City, there's opportunities here, right? We like to say, or I like to say, and I feed it to my team, right? When it comes to our people strategy, we are not just building infrastructure, we're building opportunity, right? So we're building opportunities for generations to come, right? This is a long-term project, meaning there's opportunities for folks to return home, to develop in a skill set, right? That they may have never had the opportunity to do in this capacity. I also want us to think about, you can see here the different areas, but thinking about what this means in regards to our everyday lives, right? Thinking about these airports are our gateways to the world, right? And also with that revitalization and redevelopment of both the St. Thomas and St. Croix airports, there comes an additional need for opportunities when it comes for the workforce. So we are also, through this project, adding a number of jobs and opportunities within the aviation space, thinking of skills like technical and project management, right? That will be able to hone in on the skill set that we, as a Virgin Islands workforce, honestly so desperately need, right? And also thinking about just what this means in regards to thinking of the impact that this can have when it comes to educational programs, right? And how this feeds into other areas, right? So what does this, now having these skill sets and these opportunities here, right, within our two islands, what does that now mean for programs when you think about it, like, educational opportunities at UVI, right? So there's a lot more things that tap into this project when you think about the economical impacts that it has for Virgin Islanders in the long term. I know some of this can be a little confusing, right? I was new to aviation. There's a lot of things I didn't really understand in the beginning. So I invite you to really sit with it and understand what the impacts of it is for, your families, right? If you are in that space where you may be a caretaker for both kids, and we have a large aging population, right? So thinking about that here, one of the things here that I've been so passionate about, although I've been away for 13 years, I have remained involved in my community. I've sit on multiple boards here in the Virgin Islands. I have also done a lot of volunteering. I'm usually home at least 3 times a year, right? Doing some type of engagement that serves the community. And one of the things that we really need is to think about what the daily impacts is for our aging population, right? Thinking about when we have our senior citizens who are going through the airport, what is that experience for them, right? How are they getting on the planes, right? What does that opportunity look like in order to make sure that they're also comfortable, right? Also thinking about ADA compliance, right? We didn't do such a great job at that as a territory, so now there's an opportunity to rebirth some of that. So I invite you to think about, again, the overarching economical opportunities that the Sky City project is bringing and what this means not only for our aviation experience, our travel experience, right, but thinking about it, what it means to continuously providing opportunities where we can continue to be global citizens, right? Thinking about, again, education, healthcare, right? We know that healthcare is a big thing for us, right? But the reality of it is, if you have visiting physicians, how are they getting here, right? So thinking about the nuances that this project has the tentacles into.
Thank you, Jamez. we often get lost in the details about construction and heavy technical stuff, but at the end of the day, these projects are all about the people. Stories like Jameza's story, we have others. We recently hired somebody who's coming to join us on the environmental team, also coming home with children. I think it's a wonderful story. We and our partners in Sky City will be developing training programs, apprenticeship programs, connections with the local community, different institutions like the university to help connect the community into this project. We look forward to that. The airports are about connecting people, connecting stories, sometimes good stories, sometimes sad stories. But at the end of the day, these are about people. And we think a lot about how people are affected by our projects and how we can better the communities that we build them in and we operate them in. So wanted to emphasize that point to you. What are our next steps? Obviously, we're going through this consultation process on the rates and charges. We're involved in a consultation process with the airlines as well. We're working very hard with VIPA to figure out the terms of the P3 agreement. We anticipate being able to do that by the end of next month. We then anticipate, as Ryan mentioned, the charges go into effect November 1st. That is when the operational takeover is anticipated to happen. Should immediately notice a change. Once we're in the operation, we're going to be working very hard, all of our financing teams, to deliver the financing and start the construction in Q1 of next year. That will be very exciting. St. Croix has roughly a 16 to 18 month construction period to deliver those modernizations and improvements. And St. Thomas, a little longer. It's a much more complicated and involved program. Should be delivered by within the year 2031. I wanted to just introduce one other member of our team before I make a closing remark. Kelly Fredericks. Kelly is our CEO. Kelly comes to us with many decades of experience as CEO of several airports in the US mainland. Kelly, just say a little bit about yourself and then you can address this.
Well, I want to give a shout out to Mr. Kaufman back there. I too am a civil engineer, so welcome. And I want to welcome everybody. Thanks for coming out. I mean, this is important. Your time is important. We appreciate you taking the time to come here. Partners throughout. And also, I loved your opening comments, candidly, as it related to we're in your house. You know, and we feel very welcome here, and we appreciate that. Steve touched on the next steps just a minute ago. Really just kind of looking ahead, what can expect. We're going to continue to collaborate with VIPA to finish this transition process, this transition phase, and have a successful financial close, as identified in a previous slide, of around 2007. I'm glad that, and Jamez, I didn't know you were from the USVI. When did that happen? But I'm glad you touched on job opportunities, bringing people back. I kind of feel like tonight is the first, and Manifa touched on it when her opening comments. We're doing the same thing on Wednesday in St. Thomas, and then on Thursday in St. John. So we're very, very excited about that. And I like, this opportunity to finally start getting information. The floodgates, please, I encourage you, take a look at our website, www.skycityvi.com. There's a lot of great information, frequently asked questions and answers, all kinds of stuff that you'll see here. And check out our social media information as it relates. I think it's at Sky City Airports. A lot of stuff, a lot more information forthcoming. And perhaps, and I don't want to say necessarily most importantly, jobs creation, opportunities for those on the island. Thank you for
And once again, thank you for listening. And I would like to turn it back to Ava. Final words.
Good evening again. I thank everyone for coming, sharing their comments and their questions. If you have additional questions, you can send them to our email website or can let Monifa know and we'll be sure to make sure that they get answered. I just wanted to say that I am a proud Virgin Islander. I was born and raised on St. Thomas. And I feel that we deserve better conditions at our airports. And as a Virgin Islander that works at the Virgin Islands Port Authority, no, this is worse. Can you hear me? Yeah. We deserve better. We deserve better facilities, safe, clean conditions to work in, and our visitor experience should be optimal, and we should be competitive with our neighboring islands. The one thing we agree, both the airlines, Sky City, VIPA, that what we're doing isn't working, and we need, everybody feels that we need to get our airports modernized. And I thank the airlines, Lauren, Zanel, Sandra, I don't remember your name, for Cape, Wilfred. I'm glad that you guys came here, and we hear you. We hear you, and we don't take your comments lightly, and we are still going to make every effort to work with you and get you guys to the table and be part of what we're doing. It's part of the process. It's not finalized. It's still part of the process. As I indicated earlier, the rates have not been increased. After the public hearings, we still have to go and get the board to approve the process. So we're going to take all your comments into consideration, and a final decision will be made. And we value the airlines, their long commitment to the Virgin Islands, and, you know, families don't agree all the time. But at the end of the day, we all want what's best for the Virgin Islands. So we are not going to stop working with the airlines and doing everything that we can do to make sure that this project is in the best interest of the Virgin Islands and our traveling public. And I wanted to thank Zanel and United Airlines. We're working right now on bringing flights to St. Croix in October to Newark. So we're working on that. So, I mean, you know, we disagree, but we're still working and doing things, you know, and we're going to get there. We're going to get there. And I think once this project is done, because the Virgin Islands needs these airports improved, I think everybody's going to be very, very happy with the outcome. And we all need to work together to get it done. So again, I really appreciate you guys for coming and sharing what you shared with us today. And we're going to continue to work and making the airports better. Thank you.
We're now going to transition into the part of the hearing that makes attending in person more exciting. We're going to move towards the back of the room so you can see the renderings in person and be able to interact with Sky City and VIPA officials in person. Those of you that are listening, please ask your friends and families to come out on St. Thomas, Wednesday, July 29th at the University of the Virgin Islands 13D Research and Strategy Innovation Center, UVI, at 6 p.m. That's on Wednesday. And on Thursday, July 30th, Julius E. Sprouse School Auditorium on St. John, also starting at 6 p.m. We understand some people have to attend on Zoom because they can't make it in person, but we do encourage everyone to come out and attend in person. One second, please. There's a question on Zoom. before we transition, we'll ask this question. My question is, what is the difference between the projects versus the last attempt to get Henry E. Rohlsen Airport off the ground? Another local contractor had the project. Are we for certain it will get done? Apparently, they're saying there was another contractor that tried to develop the airport terminal. What is the difference between that and what we're doing now? Correct. We do have repair projects that are going on, periodically, but this is something that we've never done before. This is unprecedented, this P3 project. So I hope that answers your question. This has not been done before. We did check the Zoom and we didn't have any other questions. Well, we have moved past that segment now, so can we, you can. I don't, there's nobody on there. He's not on there. Is he on the Zoom now? Okay, what is the name? Okay. Do we have a Charles Ferrara online? Charles Ferrara. Okay. Unmute that person. Where?
And then